Every day your self-worth starts back at zero. Your inner peace and clarity piggy bank starts back at zero. You have to build it up every day. It doesn't bleed over from the last day. That's one thing that people forget. They wake up and they're like, why don't I feel good? Well, you haven't done anything yet.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Janet Kazaza, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with the SEAL. Today's guest, I am so excited to speak to. He went from jail to Navy SEAL, back to jail, kicked out of the U.S. military, suicidal, homeless, changed everything by going to France, joining the French Foreign Legion, and becoming the first Navy SEAL French Foreign Legionnaire. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to introduce you to Tyler Cavanaugh. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Let's dive into these lessons.
Let's dive into it. So, okay, I'm just going to get to the age of 7. You had this dream of becoming a Navy SEAL. As you were growing up, you got into trouble. And as you said on some shows, you were stacking up a lot of bad habits. I want to know, how these bad habits derailed your path and how you brought yourself back to getting back to where you wanted to go. So it was 7 years old, you had this dream of being a Navy SEAL, yet you had these bad habits that were stacking up and, creating problems for yourself. Did you just feel like it just wouldn't matter, being arrested and all that, you'd still be able to join the military?
I just wasn't thinking that far ahead. Simple as that. I just was so in the moment and so immature and lacked situational awareness on such a massive scale that I didn't understand the administrative hurdles I was going to have to go through.
And when you understood that and had that reality check, what was that like for you?
It was scary. It was daunting because I thought I had effed up all the way because, it was sounding like from all the recruiters and the people I was talking to and Google that the doors were shut for me. So that was a scary moment when I thought, my entire dream, what I was trying to do wasn't going to be possible, and I wasn't going to even have the opportunity because of what I had done and all the actions I had committed.
Now, you say something really interesting. You say, because the actions I have committed, it's like you did this to yourself. And at what point did it hit you that I did all this to me? Did you take accountability? Was it in those moments where the doors were shut in your face, or was it later on in life?
One thing I had always taken accountability that all the things were my fault, would still do more to myself and would still continue down the same habits but really it was my pathways were wired so deep that there was a lot of unraveling and rewiring of pathways I was going to have to do that was going to require a lot of pain and a lot of isolation. And it just wasn't possible where I was, or I was too immature to allow the process to happen.
Now, let's talk about the moment of clarity, when you called your dad to get that reset. Talk about what happened prior to calling your dad and when you were okay, I need a hard reset right now, and what that was like for you.
Yeah, so that was the first moment of clarity in October 2004. I was dealing drugs. I was doing drugs. I was really failing again at my third college and had dropped off the football team. And I realized my life was hollow. What I once was this driven individual, I had lost myself along the way somewhere. And I felt the walls closing in. And it find out a lot of people around me right after I had left got arrested. Things happened, went to prison. Lots of stuff went down. And people died. Things went down, and so I actually probably had that moment of clarity at the right time. It was me knowing my dad would be level-headed about it. He had been through a lot of things too. He would understand what I was saying, and also I didn't understand the type of change in location I needed. I thought I just needed a couple weeks off, and then I'd be back at it. But that was my own immaturity still. I was 19 at the time. So what I realized and how fate and God worked out for me is I ended up flying to Boston and staying there for 2 years.
Wow, 2 years. Oh my gosh. And then when you got back, how quickly did you go back into bad habits, or just little by little, like not having that self-discipline?
Well, it wasn't so much like I was just some monk over there, but I was just more isolated. I was just more isolated. I still had gotten arrested one time over there, but I was so busy with work and school and training, Muay Thai and things like that. I was strapped. It was just a lot. So I didn't really have the opportunity to get into some things. And I was living off campus. And so when I got to University of California, Santa Cruz, moved on campus, and the girls and the parties and this and that, I had all good intentions, right? The road to hell is paved with. When I got there, I was like, I'm going to be so locked on. And I closed my door. I was like, I'm not even going to go out and deal with this. And I had some girls knock on my door one day. And then I went, all right. And so I went out, and it was just kind of on after that. And I started drinking heavily. And it was not gradual. It was pretty immediate that you cannot manage your life well when you're just drinking hard liquor hard. It's impossible. You're going to wake up late. You're going to go to bed. It's just not go to class, be procrastinating on work, not feeling good, not training. All those problems were exacerbating. And that's what was happening at the junior year of college. And I ended up still graduating, but I had stacked a lot of problems and a lot of legal problems through those 2 years.
And then after that, you decided to go into the military. I mean, I know you've always since 7 had that Navy SEAL dream, but then, what at this point in your life, then what'd you decide to do? Where'd you go?
Well, I knew I was going in the military. So that was part of the issue. I wasn't trying to get internships. I was like, I just need to graduate, because that's what we did in my family. That was where I was from. Everyone goes to college. It's just kind of the extension of high school. So I just kind of did it. And then I went, okay, time to go in the military. I hadn't prepped anything. I hadn't talked to anybody. And by that time, I still had pending court cases. Was on probation. I had a lot of things. I just thought they were all misdemeanors. It wasn't me pushing old ladies in the street. So I was like, I'm fine. That's not enough. That's what I didn't learn, is like, you don't just have to not be doing bad stuff to people to be stacking karmic debt and real issues. It was just all these small things, drunken publics, driving on a suspended, stuff like that. But so many of them that when a judge looked at it, he's like, look, you got to go to jail. And so I went to jail in Santa Cruz County was given 4 months.
I want to back up a hot second. So when you said, I want to go, the goal was to always go into the military. Did you then you went to the Marine? Well, you knocked on the Marine door, right? But if you had this dream at 7 to be a Navy SEAL, what stopped you from going straight that way? Why Marine, Army, then Navy?
Well, I thought it was going to be almost impossible to get in with my background. That was the first thing, into SEALs or into the Navy. I thought the Navy would be more difficult. And the real goal I had was to go get a gun and go deploy. That was my goal. And so I knew also that failing SEAL training, I'd be on a boat, right? So I wouldn't have a gun. That was a huge, huge concern for me, because growing up in San Diego, a lot of people I knew failed SEAL training. All-American water polo players, wrestlers, nobody passed. I never knew anybody who passed. And they all ended up scraping barnacles in the Navy. So I was scared of that. Fear was the answer you're looking for. So I went to the Marines. My dad was a Marine. I grew up on a Marine base for a while. So I had some of that association. I took the ASVAB with them. I started the process with them. But also, I attempted to go officer route first. And I knew the Navy was going to take a long time. The SEALs was going to take 3 years for an officer package off the street like that. And I thought it would be a little bit more expeditious for me in the Marine Corps. Turns out that didn't work out because of my tattoos. So as fate would have it, it directed me to other branches.
How do you, that fear you talk about to being on ship, it was crippling, that fear. How do you push past that fear and just just go all in?
The beautiful thing was I had no more options. Right? The Army shut me down. The Air Force was going to be impossible, so I wasn't even trying to. The Navy was the only one that took me, and it was the only job they said I could pretty much do. They said if I could pass all the stuff, this is destiny and fate mixed together. The guy said, look, you cannot even have a job with your drug charges and things like that. There's nothing else you can really do other than straight penalty or be a Navy SEAL if you can pass everything. So I said, well, if this isn't a sign, I said, let's do it. So that's when I started down that process.
when you're at that point, quitting doesn't even become an option. You're
Just hitting yourself into a corner. And that's a lot of what I also tell people is plan Bs are not the deal, because I'm not saying you shouldn't have contingencies. But like I say, when you go out the wire on an operation, you have mission A. That's it. There's no mission B, mission C. Plan A, mission A. You have contingency routes along the way in case the vehicle goes down or what. But it's all plan A. You don't miss, plan A, mission A is not available. We go to mission B. That's not how it works. So that's kind of how I operate my life. You have one option, and I had painted myself into a proverbial corner of I had to become a Navy SEAL, because if I was in the regular military, I wouldn't have made enough money to pay my student loans. That's how much I had. And my mom had co-signed. So there was multiple reasons that I just needed to pass.
Now, you talked about your time in jail prior to that, because essentially, if I'm correct, it was you had probation for 3 years, but you were able to go to jail to get rid of that 3-year probation. Is that correct?
Yes, commute my probation.
But how did you make that go?
I talked to a lawyer and I said, I need this probation commuted. They can commute probation. So that, and you haven't been arrested, kind of in the system for a little bit, you kind of learn these things, is they have the ability to commute probation. I ended up having to do that again later down the road, years later, as a SEAL. But a judge has the ability to commute the probation. He can just stamp it. He can wipe it clean. But in my case, because I had violated the probation, so many different more arrests, that he wasn't just, and good on him. I hadn't really earned that. Or he had proof that I really was going to go in the military. So it ended up being all right.
When I was listening to one of your interviews, it seemed like, and you talked about this, there's this delusion of confidence, and I can relate. That's totally me. I have this, when I went deaf, they told me I'd never regain my hearing. And I was like, well, that's what they said about the 4-minute mile. And but the thing is that like, as you're going at it and you're like, you have like this 0.01 chance and you're getting like doors slammed in your face and you're not sure if it's possible, but it's just you. You're the one that's really driving it along. How do you hold on to that belief when everyone else is saying it's impossible and all these doors are shutting in your face, if no one's ever done it before? How do you keep that alive?
I said, they say this, it's 0.01. I said, good, I am that. Obviously, it has to happen to somebody, and that's me. That's how I always approach it. If it's not 0.0%, then I'm the guy it happens to. That's just how I believe, and that's what's worked out in my life, and that's has always come to fruition. If it's 1%, then yeah, well, who is that 1%? That's me. That's how I always approached it, and that's where that delusional confidence kind of comes from, because I had no social proof moving into a lot of this stuff. I was a good athlete. I had some accolades in that capacity, but I had no real proof that I could really commit and do something long term and actually be successful. So I had to dig into where that delusional confidence comes from. After a while, you can build up real confidence. Right? You can build up with social proof. You can build up real confidence. But at the beginning, you have to have some delusional confidence to get started.
I want to talk about the first time you were in jail. You said like no sun. What was that? What was that like for you? Was it a reality check? How did you feel? Like being in jail is just like, that'd be just such a fear for me. So for you, like what lessons if you learned any lessons that you took with you? Because like, were you ever like, I never want to be here ever again? And then what was that like when you ended up there years later?
I had been arrested before, so I'd been in jail a few times for like 2 or 3 nights, in San Diego and things like that. So, but my first kind of longer stay. Not like I was short. It's only a few months, but I actually felt good because I was finally getting this cleared up and I could get moving on with my life, because this was kind of a process. So actually moving in there, I was relatively happy, to be quite honest. I could work out and do my things. I didn't really have too many issues with other inmates and stuff. But the sunlight was a hard thing. The food was a hard thing. But I just got on my program fast. And just like out here, you have to get on your daily flow. I volunteered to work for the jail. So I was doing laundry for the jail 7 days a week. So that kind of kept me moving and engaged, read, wrote, things like that.
Now, when you were in there, were you training for yourself, like to go to buds? And then like when you got out, you struggled with running. It's not your forte. So how did you build that up?
Well, I was trying to train, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I had no idea what kind of numbers I really needed. Or I was working out consistently, but I was still getting too much weight. I was too heavy kind of getting out. And I was kind of coming out of jail like 230, not all good weight, some like football weight, a little bit of fat, some muscle, but I was just like not ready. So when I got out and actually started down the process, which was a few months later because I had to go through Marines and Army and this and that. By the time I was actually training, it was eye-opening because the miles, I had to seek out mentorship, formal mentorship from former SEALs, guys who were actually doing it formally for Naval Special Warfare. I knew I needed to be around that, guys who were going to make the decision about my waivers I needed. I was like, who do I need to talk to? Who makes the decision? How do I get in front of them? So that's what I did.
Well, you said there was a lot of failure around, like you've never known anyone prior to that, like becoming a SEAL, and there was this fear of being on the boat and stuff like that. Were there ever like really low moments during training where you were really questioning if you were going to be able to do this? And if so, how did you pull yourself out of that?
In SEAL training?
Yeah.
Every run, every step. I was not sure I was going to be able to do it. It was, every step. I was like, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I could do this. It was every day, every step, every run, for sure. And sometimes on the obstacle course, just fear every day. You just don't stop. It's as simple as that. Just don't stop. That was it. I was saying, well, if I fail, I fail. They're going to have to drag me out of here dead. But if I fail, I fail. Fear of failure was huge. Fear of injuries was huge. So I was just very careful. I had nowhere else to be. So I didn't have the option to stop.
Now, you got through it. You got through SEAL training. You became a SEAL. You got to SEAL Team 7, which is the one you wanted since you were 7. Mm-hmm. What was that like for you, especially looking at the path that took you there?
Surreal. Walk into that cage with my name on it in the locker room. That was a surreal moment where I realized that, because I remembered the first day I started. And I remember that feeling very clearly of I'm really starting in this pipeline. And then 2 years later, 3 really, was when I showed up at SEAL Team 7. It was, okay, here I am. It was quite a powerful moment.
Being in that powerful moment, being at like the pinnacle of your life, like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm here. And you're celebrating. And every single day, you're just loving it. You're loving everything about it. You're really immersed in it. And you talk about the dangers of celebrating early and why you need to maintain discipline when things are going well. Talk to me about those dangers and share the story about what happened when you learned this lesson.
Yeah, there was a few, right? And there was signs along the way. It was when you're peaking. It's when you're peaking and life is going incredibly well. That's when you should probably start subtracting things you're doing. That's what I always suggest is the momentum picks up. People know, a lot of guys listening or women, the momentum picks up. You get a little ahead of your skis. You start drinking your own Kool-Aid a little bit. You start forgetting what got you there in the first place. That's the first piece. And what happened was I was just early promote. I was the first one to get promoted out of my group. I was cooking with gas as far as promotions and accolades and this and that and qualifications. I was cocky, not flamboyantly cocky, but I was feeling like I was crushing it and I couldn't be stopped. And 2 weeks later, literally 2 weeks later from when I had gotten that promotion and that pay, I hit a guy in a bar. I'm drinking too much, going out with a girl at a different state on a training trip, and I hit him one time, and that started a whole cascade of me having an aggravated assault, me being sued, me being this and that ended up being like a 2-year, 3-year deal.
Was that how you got kicked out?
No, you'd think it would slow me down, but no, I ended up going to Iraq on bail, right? Because that was after my first appointment to Yemen. Then I went to go to Iraq with this pending charge at 6 years in prison plus 3 parole as my plea deal. Plus, I'm being sued for $500,000. civilly. So I had some serious stress on deployment. And when guys were looking forward to coming home, I was not. I was volunteered to stay for 3 more months. And I thought about going AWOL and joining the Kurdish Peshmerga, seriously. And but I didn't. Obviously, I had cooler heads prevailed. But I was concerned. Glad I didn't, because I got back. I had a really good attorney, not cheap. And we worked out a deal to where they dropped the felony charge. I had to pay the guy all the rest, everything in a check up front for them to drop the felonies. And then I had a 4-year, very formal probation. I couldn't leave the city without permission. I couldn't drink, couldn't any. Okay, fine. Was very tight for about 3 months. Then I got another altercation, right? Not a fight, but an altercation. And at a concert that was a cascade also. I got an aggravated assault on a police officer, which I didn't. It was just, they tried to tackle me and I got up and was like continuing to run. And that was the nail in the coffin. So that was the second charge. Navy JAG got a hold of it. NCIS, they're like, this guy, another charge. I had a top security clearance that I had just gotten back. So now I'm getting that pulled again. And so that was the cascade, because that was the catalyst for a performance enhancing drug test. I ended up beating that charge, getting and that was, because then it couldn't kind of throw it out. But because it was another aggravated charge, that kicked off a violation of probation, which kicked off the federal marshals trying to extradite me out of California. It was a huge, huge cluster. Now I ended up going, that was the catalyst that got me kicked out. I ended up having to go back to jail in Idaho for the second time. They commuted my probation, ironically. So that second charge ended up getting all my probation cleared up, which was, it was what it was. But I walked out of jail, signed my DD-214, I was kicked out, and I was completely out of the military and done off probation.
How was the stress of all that, and how did you get through that on a daily?
Oh, that was, looking back, I don't know how I was standing. I would just try to focus on the things I could control. I knew I could still work out. I had a girlfriend at the time, so there was a little bit of, that I was in love with, so there was a little bit of distraction, which was helpful, thank God. But everything was caving in around me. There was a lot of concern. I was still not doing the right stuff. I started smoking weed. I started even still active. I was doing all the wrong stuff, keeping myself at least physically capable, doing what I could. It was hard though, looking back.
Going through all that, like, especially when you really can't control it, our minds kind of take over, and we want to control it. We want to fix it, but we also don't know what's going on. And our mind causes that extra stress and everything. Were you sleeping at night? Like, it seems like, obviously you mentioned you took weed, you were like numbing as much as you can, but how did you like not lose it with everything like in your mind? Were there a lot of thoughts that were going on for yourself or driving you?
Yeah, I started prepping the battle space for the next move. I had some options for some private military contracts, and also started prepping for some private residential real estate development. I started pushing my contacts. So what I would say to somebody is start focusing forward, right? If you know it's going to crash and burn behind you, because the writing was on the wall, it was just a matter of time. And so it wasn't like I was wondering if it was done. So I had to start moving forward and start kind of getting my next step prepped.
A lot of times we hit this depressed state and we like binge Netflix, or like, we're on our phone just like checking out of reality because we just don't want to face what's ahead. And it sounds like you did what you needed to do to push, to work whatever you can for your future. Is that just normally you? Like, do you not like check out in terms of like that route of I'm gonna disassociate? Instead, it's like, no, I'm gonna make things happen as much as I can.
I get too much anxiety from trying to check out. It's just too apparent. I can't sit and watch Netflix. I'm not saying I won't try to check out for a little bit, but I couldn't do it on any extended period of time if I know I have some serious stuff breathing down my neck.
Now let's talk about when you did get kicked out. You said day one, you just went right back to your old life. Why did you, like your old, meaning like bad habits, the bad habits of drugs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Why did you go that route? And how did you re-find a sense of purpose?
I didn't see really anything wrong with it. That was the thing. A lot of times when I didn't really know better, I just kind of was like, okay, well, I'm still going to work. I'm still working out. I still have a kind of a beautiful life if you looked at it from the outside in. And I wasn't reckless with it. Well, I was, but at the beginning, I was like, oh, it was me lying to myself. It was all kind of this, that. Nothing was too crazy. It was all prescription, right? At the beginning, right? It was all prescription. So whatever, so there was like all these lies that I was telling myself but it was Adderall, Xanax, weed, alcohol, everything's legal. Everything's, it was like, okay, whatever. But it was thrown off my cheek. I wasn't centered at all. And that's all so self-serving. You get really wrapped up in your own world because you're not selfless at all. You're just focusing on how you want to feel, what you want to do. And I was still getting things done professionally, but it was kind of a learning curve.
When did you find your sense of self-worth? Because it sounds like you didn't have much of it.
I thought I did. And I thought I did. I thought I was being successful and whatever. I had the beautiful girlfriend and this and that. So it was like, whatever. I was feeling relatively happy, to be quite honest, every day. It wasn't like I was miserable by any stretch. I had moved into a really awesome job. I lived in a great place and I was almost too happy. That's the problem, is I was never miserable. That was the issue for my whole life. I've always rode pretty positive in the SEAL teams. The problem was when I got too happy, I tore it all down. I would party too because I was in too good of a mood. And then when I moved into this next stuff, I was in a great fucking mood. I wasn't really trying to numb anything. Some people try to run through. I was trying to enhance it. That was a little bit like a different angle. I wasn't hiding or numbing anything. I was feeling great. So I wanted to feel even better, but not the right way, right? Because it's false. So you're going to crash and burn at some point, which is what happened to me. And it wasn't, I didn't find myself worth till way later in the Legion because I was fine. And then I moved into a venture capitalist job and then started stacking on a fentanyl habit. That I started because of just emotional hurt. I had gotten broken up at the time and I kind of started this and I just kind of kept the habit going. I found out I liked it at night and I felt good and I kept working. So it was like of my work output, I never like partied and wasn't focused. I wasn't out in clubs and hanging out. I was snorting lines of fentanyl and doing emails till 3 a.m. Dead serious. I was raising millions of dollars of capital for a year work because I was working like 19, 20, 21 hours a day. And I would wake up, take out, and continue on. And so like my bosses were like, wow, this guy's output is crazy. So I got promoted over the months to CEO of the company, one of them, and was raising millions for multiple other companies, pitching techs, meeting with congressmen, doing all these things. So I had all this social proof, man, I'm crushing. Who can tell me shit? But I was getting speed wobbles. I was missing meetings. Things started slipping through the cracks. People started whispering behind my back. Right? There was like all these things, which I wasn't noticing at all because I was too in it. And then I just came crashing and burning. And that's when everything fell apart. It was like 2 years to the day. Almost. It was 5 years to the day today. Really.
Whoa.
So it was 5 years to the day today. It all came crashing down. So it was a moment where I just realized that it was all going away. And I still had that delusional confidence, like it might come back. So that was like kind of keeping me in the game. But then I realized kind of moving into the future is when I was homeless in my truck and suicidal with no money, nothing. That's when I realized that delusional confidence was gone. Right? There was at some point, even my confidence can get crushed. And that was the moment for me when I went, damn, like I got no hope in any direction. And that's really hard for me. That's a really hard place for me to get to because I do have that really rooted, deep confidence, but I couldn't even grasp it.
Let's go there. You're homeless, you're in your truck, you at the lowest point, you're contemplating suicide. You have your shotgun right there, right? And what questions did you ask yourself or did you state to pull yourself out of it and just go to France?
Well, it was a while, but I was just like, man, I'm tired. That was really the bottom thing. I was just so tired of trying. And I didn't see the point anymore. I was lot of my dialogue. But then I realized I was being pretty selfish. And most of the stuff I was thinking about was me, not anybody else. So that's what I decided. If I'm going to die, I might as well do it cool. So I was like, maybe they'll send me to deployment or something. That's really why I thought. It was like, well, if I'm going to die, I might as well do it with my boots on. So that's what, or write a cool story while doing it. So that's when I was deciding to join the Foreign Legion.
What questions should people ask themselves when they're at that low point that you're at, like the lowest? What should they be saying and asking themselves and being honest with themselves to pull themselves out and get driven again?
Get honest about where you're at. Don't lie to yourself anymore. Be honest about what decisions brought you there. You, nothing else. The minute you realize that it's all you, now nobody else's fault. It's not your mom's, not your fucking your childhood, nothing. It's just your choices brought you there. Once you come to that, that's empowering, because then you can change it. When you realize it's all your fault, well, guess what? The solutions are your fault too, or your ability also. And then start thinking about other people, not yourself. Okay, do I have people in my life that love me? Oh, okay. Then pick a direction and just move. Any doesn't have to be right. People get analysis paralysis. Any plan is better than no plan. And imperfect action is better than perfect inaction, right? So people just got to start moving.
Today's episode is sponsored by my favorite jewelry company, Omnia. Omnia blends genuine crystals with cutting-edge NFC technology to create the world's first smart crystal bracelet. This bracelet connects to the Elevate web application, giving you a membership to over 200 self-care resources, from meditations to journals to breathing exercises and so much more. Visit discoveromnia.com and use code MindsetPodcast for 40% off. DiscoverOmnia.com, your key to wellness.
Then you went to France. You knocked on the door. You had nothing else beforehand. Like, it was just, this is all you got. Was there any point though where you were questioning, like, what did I get myself into, and what was going on where you were questioning that? Like, what was there ever a point where you were like being pushed, or you're like, I don't know anymore?
The French Foreign Legion is pretty raw, bare bones unit. There was a lot of guys with not a lot of experience telling me what to do, and cleaning toilets and just getting ripped on and running in the cold and the ice. And I was just like, damn. But I wasn't there to be Rambo. I was there to burn time. That was the truth. I was just using it to write a cool story. I knew it was going to suck. I knew it wasn't going to be better training or like better deployments than anything I had had. So I knew it was going to be a step down in terms of that. And it was. So that was hard, because I was just like 34, getting to run around. I'm like beat up. Then getting back in the flow of running stuff was hard. And yeah, there was a lot of cold days, but I never really thought, oh man, I got to leave. But I was like, man, this just like SEALs, this sucks, but I got nowhere else to go.
You mentioned in an interview that it was more psychological than anything else. Can you tell us what was really psychological, and how you just kept winning?
Yeah, it was psychological because it was a lot of, you don't know what the hell they're talking about, but it's in French. So that was that piece. Then you're just no respect. They don't know who you are. They don't care. So there was that piece. And it was the psychological battle of getting handed a toothbrush to clean a toilet. And I just been a special operator. Being, shark shit on the bottom of the ocean was psychologically challenging. Not to mention all the long runs where I was just getting yelled at and beat up. And it was psychologically very challenging, because it was going to be for fun. It was going to be for a long time. It wasn't stopping, and there was no going, and there was no place of comfort. It wasn't like being in the United States. You have nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to go. You're stuck there. You can't leave. You have no passport. There's nowhere to go. You're not making it. So there was a lot of, you're just in the pressure cooker. There's no going off on the weekends, chilling. You're isolated too, quite literally, with the language, with the reality, the geography, all that.
Kind of sounds worse than jail. Because at least you have the language barrier. Did you feel that for yourself at times?
It was hard. It was just difficult with the amount of pounding and the amount of running and the amount of sleep deprivation and food deprivation. That was all hard, and it was raw boot camp it was a big step down. So that was very difficult, was just dealing with that piece.
How long was that piece?
The actual boot camp piece, selection part, about 5 months.
Did it get easier after that? Like, was it a little bit more comfortable?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but not really, because you still are like that boot camp-esque reality of getting room inspections, standing, and doesn't go away in the Legion. It stays for your entire time. So that is a difficult piece of the Legion. It's very, very strict. They'll put you in jail for walking across the grass well there. It's very strict. And I had some moments there where it was for, being disciplined for things that were kind of ridiculous. A lot of burning time. They don't allow you to sit around. So if there's nothing to do, it doesn't matter if it's snowing out, ice, they'll have you painting rocks, like dead serious, for hours, days, if there's nothing to do. So there's like this time to kill that they don't let you just sit around. All that was very challenging.
2 questions on that. One is, do people get promoted, like throughout it? And if so, did you? And then my other question is, were you ever put in jail during your time in the French Legion?
No, I was not. Never put in jail. I was promoted twice.
Wow.
By the time I got there. So I was promoted twice. And second time was they send you to a formal course, or it's corporal course, which is quite challenging. And you have to go through a lot more physical selection to get there. So I did it pretty fast. And then after that, your life gets a little bit better in terms of what and you're not needing all the shit, but you're still kind of at the bottom of the rung. It's a little bit better.
At what point was there, a brotherhood, in what you were going through? Because there's all these different language barriers. Was there ever this feeling of brotherhood?
Yeah, you have guys that you get close with. But the Legion is, there was guys who didn't speak the same language as me that I got close with, and guys who spoke English I did also. But the Legion is a very stark, cold environment, just in general. So it doesn't facilitate really that. Job satisfaction isn't super high, right? You have a lot of guys there from really tough countries that need to be there, that would rather not be. So there's that piece. There's that tough environment, which, yeah, we had cool moments being deployed in the jungle and doing jungle operations, or working with NATO and Estonia and this and that on the Russian border. So we had cool moments that you have bonding moments, and shared hardship also breeds that. So it was different than SEALs for sure.
Now, you mentioned it was like cold. It's cold. It's a cold environment. How was that for someone that you mentioned earlier in the interview that you're a relatively happy guy? Were you able to bring that happiness? Did you have to bring that happiness within yourself? Did it depress you at all?
Yeah, I was always pretty positive. I try to stay pretty positive, and I got more positive as I started to change my daily habits. Kind of what we'll talk about is when I built my self-worth back up, I started to feel, but for a couple of years, I was pretty low. I was focused on what I had to, finishing my tattoos. I was focused on self-development, but I was regretful of things I had done, things I had lost, like all those emotions about losing, the girlfriend, the job, the life. And that reality was tough to kind of get through. And that was hard, especially for the first year. So that was trying time in terms of that. So the coldness of it was something you had to deliberately fight through, because there was a lot of negativity there.
How did you deliberately fight that?
Through my daily habits.
Now let's talk about that. Tell me about those daily habits.
So my thing is, I just needed to feel better, because I realized there was no other place for me to go after this, because I still wasn't happy. So there was no other unit in the world. There was nothing. So I was like, okay, I'm the only Navy SEAL and Legionnaire in the world, still not happy. What am I going to do? What is the next step? I was looking at being a mercenary and this and that, but I was like, still running for myself. What do I need to do? I looked around. I was like, well, I guess I could just figure it out right here in this barracks room. So I started reading philosophy. What are these guys talking about? That's when I really started to dive into Marcus Aurelius, Nero, Seneca, Epictetus, those guys, Musashi. It was helpful, started to get tapped in with God more, started to really kind of get more opened up, start understanding myself, thinking about my own thoughts, challenging my own preconceived notions. Also, applicable daily steps. I was like, well, all the times I've been in my life, I've been happier. I've gotten up early. So I started getting up real early, like 3, because they got up at 5:30. So I started getting up at 3. Started working out in the bathroom before anybody got up. On deployments, anywhere, in the woods, in the barracks room, every day, no days off. And I started tracking my food. Started really focusing on finishing the vision for my body. How do I want to look? How do I want to think? Deliver visualization. Then I structured it, and then I did it on repeat every day.
And that sticks with you, correct?
That sticks with me. It's what I do.
Right. So now it's like you get up at what, 2:15 every day?
That's a little early now. I try to do at least 3:30.
And do you go to bed at the same time every day, or it's just getting up every day?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what time I go to bed. I'll get up that time no matter what. So, sometimes you can't get to bed early. Sometimes, you're in bed at 10 or 11. So it's, you're a little tired, but you tap into a lot stronger energy when you're fully aligned. All the actions I do daily are fully aligned with the outcomes I want. So when I do my visualization for my divine design, nothing I do during the day is not aligned with that. You get tapped into, and plus my hydration, supplementation, all that stuff's on point.
For those that are struggling to rebuild their discipline, what basic steps would you recommend for them to regain focus? And like if I'm going to get up at 3 every day and they have a one day where it's like 4, like what do you have for them to not beat themselves up, but just to still keep that self-discipline? So it's not like what you mentioned earlier. It's like, well, these little bad habits ended up stacking up to this big thing. And then this one day of 4 a.m. ends up being 3 days of 4 a.m. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. First thing I would have them do is contact me. That's what I'll do. Because I need to break things down for them on Zoom. I need to assess their day. I need to see, because not everybody has the same day. People work swing shift, law enforcement, firefighters. There's all these different things, so it's not all structured clean. So that's one thing as I do it. We have to tailor it. Now, basic principles are set that wake up time early, real early. I'll set it at 4 for people. Sometimes you got to phase into it. Maybe get up at 8 or 7, might take a little bit to phase into it. Also, that's not an immediate fix. So you might fail. You will fail. You might have a day off. You might have a day you sleep in on accident. But once you get back on the horse, you don't give up. Keep working at it until it becomes second nature. So your body starts to get acclimated. And all people really need is some momentum to get their mojo back. They need to subtract some bad stuff and insert some new information, some new processes, some new healthy processes that are deliberate, decisive, not, I'm going to start waking up early and then there's no plan. You don't build a house without a plan. You do it with a blueprint. Your day should be blueprinted, not structured every 5 minutes, but should have basic guidelines that you do every day that work, that are proven. So that's what I show guys how to do.
We talked about earlier that delusional confidence and tenacity. How can someone build this trait if it's not in them naturally?
Consistency. Proving to yourself you do what you say you're going to do. Again, and again, and again, and again. It's the only way to build self-worth. You can't have high self-worth without rooted discipline. Impossible. Now, there's delusion, right? There's people that are delusionally confident with no rooted reality, and they can't. Right? Some people have delusional confidence and can back it up. I happen to be one of them, right? So you have to start somewhere. Some people, if you have delusional confidence and then you're just not doing anything about it, well, you're just delusional. You're delusionally incapable. That's different. So that person has to start getting honest. That person can't be helped until they can be honest. But if somebody's like, look, I need to start building my confidence. Guess what? Set the wake up time. Don't press snooze. Win it. Boom. You just put a gold coin in your self-confidence piggy bank. Then do your workout. Then you tack. You put those gold coins in every day. Every day your self-worth starts back at 0. Your inner peace and clarity piggy bank starts back at 0. You have to build it up every day. It doesn't bleed over from the last day. That's one thing that people forget. They wake up and like, why don't I feel good? Well, you haven't done anything yet. Inner peace and clarity are two very coveted states in nature for human beings, the most. And people think it's free. It's not free.
I really like that was pretty much a game changer for me in terms of every day you gotta rebuild it. You start at zero every time you wake up. That was a really good one that I'll be taking with me. What question should they come to you? You do coaching now, right? Do you coaching now? And being that someone that's been there, you've been at the lowest of lows and the highest of highs. And what questions do you or do you think your clients need to ask themselves to have that improvement and growth to pulling themselves out of that low of low?
Yeah. First, I just ask them, are you happy? Right? I don't really like the word happy, but it's such a good word. People know what I mean. Are you happy? If the answer is no, we have to change some things. There's nothing's going to change if you don't change. Right? That's it. So we have to start changing some stuff. All the people say, well, I kind of like eating like this. I go, are you in the body you want? They go, no, not really. I go, well, then guess what? What you're doing is not working. What you're doing is not working. So we have to change stuff. Well, they should say this. They should be open and drop their ego about what needs to change. What they're doing is not working, right? All you got to do is look at your results. Is your life the way you want it? Is the body the way you want it? Are you in a relationship that you want? The answers are no there. And we have to completely change everything because what you're doing is not working. I'm not saying everything, but a lot of things. And part of that is just simplifying, not overcomplicating. People think you got to add stuff. You really got to subtract stuff and then substitute in a few things that are deliberately and strategically inserted for a purpose. All right. So it's not more stuff. It's do less stuff better.
You mentioned the French Legion, it saved you, and what lessons did you learn throughout it that you then take with you and also share with like your clients and stuff?
The French Legion gave me the time, right? That's really more than anything. It gave me the time and space to be able to discover myself and get honest with myself. It stripped my life down to the basics, quite literally. Cleaning my underwear in the sink every day, right? That type of basic. Hanging your stuff up in your room, your socks, to dry. Very basic. So from being in a high-rise, drugs, and, all these things to cleaning your underwear, there's a lot of blah that gets stripped down. Your ego gets stripped down. So you can get real honest and you can't lie to yourself as much. That is really, really important, is to simplify your life, simplify your bills, simplify your spending, really start stripping things down. Do I need this? No. Do I need this? No. It's not serving you, it's harming you. Get rid of it. People, places, things, strip it all the way. I'm talking declutter your life, clean out your closet, clean out your drawer, really simplify everything. Simplicity is the highest form of sophistication. Simplify everything. We want to get to that elevated being, and part of that is decluttering your space and your mind.
Now, what do you have for our listeners here to do on a daily to strengthen their mindset so that when challenges come, when life hits them, when a storm comes, that they can be the victor instead of jumping down to the victim?
Everyone should be the hero in their story. Start viewing yourself from a third party as a third party observer. Would you be proud of this person if you were watching this as a movie? Everything, closed doors, open doors, ways of thinking, everything's real. Everything's accounted for. There's no neutrals here. Everything's plus or minus. So move through your day with that. And the second part is you've got to be real clear on where you're going, right? The vision, if it's clear, the price is simple. So with that, with those two pieces, things start to get a little bit more clear. And then also you have to have a read it plan. You cannot waver from your daily disciplines by how you feel. Never. Not if you're sick, not if your dog dies, not if your mom dies. Dead serious. Nothing. Not if an asteroid hits me. Nothing would change what I do. Nothing. If people work with that philosophy, then they always have a foundation. The chaos can be noisy, but they're at least calm. That is the person that is not going to get pushed off course judged by external forces. Someone that's grounded. Now, I'm not saying things don't get expedited. You can't bend a little bit with things, right? You got to be able to adjust. Not saying you got to be that strict to where you break. But there has to be some rooted disciplines that center you, that raise your vibration, and also taking responsibility for your vibration, how you act. Are you at a low frequency? Don't put that on other people, right? Be responsible, not only in what you do, but in what vibration you're putting up. And then we have tools to be able to do that, right? And maintaining that correct frequency allows you to maintain that correct perspective.
It's interesting because a lot of people, I could just go off my own personal experience. I'm very regimented. And my family is always like, you have no wiggle room, and they're always saying like, that's a lack of freedom. And I'm like, no, I think discipline and having that regimen gives you the most freedom. I'm taking care of me and when I take care of me, then everyone around me is benefiting versus the other way. And people forget that discipline, I believe, I'm into, is that it's the highest form of freedom.
Yes, discipline equals freedom. Like Jocko Willink says, it's so true because you allow to have some freedom with your time, right? If you're not disciplined, your time is not yours. You're at the whim of your desires, of lack of scheduling. It doesn't work. You have to have discipline to be able to operate in a clean and efficient way.
One last question for you. If you had what advice do you have for a client that has a family and has kids, and it's a little bit more challenging to be on when you're at the whim of your kids, especially young kids, because sometimes there is no schedule?
Most of my clients have kids. Most, right? I'd say most men and women have kids, and I was telling them, well, get up early. They go, well, I went to bed late. Okay, I guess you'll be a little tired. There is no way around the fact that you just have to make a decision about what is non-negotiable. That's it, right? You find a time to put on pants. Is that non-negotiable, right? There's so many things that you could do that we just assume. Well, start to assume other things. Start to branch that out that are just mandatory, right? You brush your teeth, found time to do that, right? I call what I do emotional and psychological grooming. It's just what you do. It's not a option. You just like putting on pants. It takes no discipline. It takes very little time, really. And if your kids get up at 5, well, you better get up at 4. If they get up at 4, you better get up at 3, right? You have to have time to do these things. And put them next to you and do it. There's a bazillion ways to get it done. Always. So I always say, you just keep pushing it until you find a way to make it work.
Thank you so much. You really were fantastic to talk to. I really enjoyed listening to your story. And you gave a lot of great advice throughout this that I hope our listeners take in, because I'm definitely taking it in. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone that's listening. Please go like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Patreon member so you get extra bonus goodies that only our Patreon members get. And I will see you guys next week.